My name is Lauren Keating, and I'm 29 years old. People describe grief like a wave that knocks you over and drags you under, but to me, it felt more like someone had turned the volume of the world all the way down. Cars still moved, days still passed. Other people laughed and went to work and ordered coffee. My own life sounded like it was happening from the next room. My dad died of a heart attack on a Tuesday. He was 56. He had been talking about early retirement in that half-joking way, sending me links to used woodworking tools, and saying he was going to teach my future kids how to fix things properly, not the YouTube way. He walked out to get the mail, leaned on the porch railing, and never came back inside. By the time the paramedics arrived, he was already gone. The funeral was small, maybe 30 people. It felt wrong that the number was that low, like the math didn't match the size of him in my life. My mom could barely stand. I held her arm while the pastor spoke, feeling her shake beside me. My sister Maya cried through the entire service, her shoulders trembling, tissues shredded in her fists. People kept walking up to me, touching my arm, saying the same sentences over and over. He's in a better place. He went quickly. At least he didn't suffer. The words started to smear together until they didn't mean anything at all. I just nodded, said thank you, shook hands, played the good daughter, because that's what you do when the world is watching you fall apart. You pretend you're not. My boyfriend wasn't there. Zach texted that morning. Food poisoning. I'm so sorry, babe. Can't leave the bathroom. I feel like death. I love you so much. Please tell your mom I'm thinking of her. I stared at the message, standing in my childhood bedroom, halfway into my black dress. There was a part of me that wanted to call him, to hear his voice, to have him tell me it was going to be okay. Another part of me pictured him hunched over the toilet and thought, if he's really that sick, what am I going to do? Drag him here? So I texted back, it's okay, just rest, I'll call you later. I was disappointed. Sure, I wanted him there. But people get sick. Life doesn't schedule disasters conveniently. We left the church for the cemetery. The sky was that flat, gray-white that makes it impossible to tell what time it is. My mom gripped my hand so tightly I thought my bones might crack as we followed the casket. The sound of the straps lowering it into the ground was too loud in the quiet. My phone buzzed in my clutch. For one stupid second, I thought, maybe it's someone checking on Mom. Maybe it's the funeral home about something important. I shouldn't have checked. I know that now. But I did. It was Zach. Hey babe, can you pick up pizza on the way home? Also, can your family drama wait? I have friends coming over and need the apartment looking decent, lol. I read it once, twice, a third time as the casket went down. Family drama. My father's funeral. My mom's shaking hand clutching mine. My sister's muffled sob beside me. Family drama. I felt my face go cold, the blood draining all at once. The letters on the screen blurred, then snapped sharp again. For a moment, my brain did that frantic thing where it tries to make something cruel sound harmless. He's joking. He has to be joking. He doesn't mean it like that. He doesn't realize where I am. Except he knew exactly where I was. I'd sent him the schedule, the address, the time. He knew we were at the cemetery. Lauren, my uncle whispered, you okay? I locked my phone and shoved it back into my purse like it had burned me. Yeah, I lied. I'm fine. We got through the rest somehow. The pastor said something about ashes and dust. People tossed flowers. I hugged relatives I only ever saw at weddings and funerals. At my mom's house afterward, there was a reception. Coffee that tasted like cardboard, casseroles and mismatched dishes, people telling stories about my dad that made me want to both laugh and scream. I moved through it all like I was underwater. Every time I thought about sitting down, someone new appeared in front of me, wanting to hug me, to tell me what my dad meant to them. I kept seeing that text in my head, like it had been carved into the back of my eyelids. Can your family drama wait? By the time I left my mom's house, it was dark. My sister wanted me to stay the night, but I said no. I need my own bed, I told her. What I really meant was, I need quiet. I need to not be watched for 10 minutes. I drove back to the apartment around 8 or 9. The closer I got, the more I let myself imagine that maybe Zach had realized how awful that text sounded. Maybe he'd cleaned up, lit a candle, made tea, something small to show he understood. I opened the door and walked into a wall of sound. Music was blasting. People were laughing, shouting over each other. The living room looked like a frat house scene from a movie. Wine bottles on every surface, Pizza boxes stacked haphazardly on my coffee table, shoes kicked off in the hallway. A girl I vaguely recognized from Zach's social media was sprawled across my couch like she lived there, scrolling her phone. She looked up at me and brightened. "Oh, hey, you're back. How was it?" "How was it?" She meant the funeral. I just stared at her. I don't know what my face was doing, but whatever it was, it made her falter. Her smile slipped. She glanced past me toward the hallway. Zach came out of the kitchen with a half-empty bottle of wine in his hand. He had that loose smile he got when he'd had just enough to drink to stop caring how he looked. He was wearing the shirt I bought him for his birthday. "Babe, perfect timing," he said, like I'd arrived for a surprise party. "We need more wine. Can you run to the store?" I didn't move. My coat was still on. My keys were still in my hand. "Get out," I said. My voice came out flat, almost calm. It surprised me. I'd expected to hear myself screaming. Zach laughed, glancing at his friends for backup. "What? Come on, don't be weird. Come have a drink with us. You've been so depressing lately. You need to loosen up." "I buried my dad today," I said. "Yeah, I know. That sucks," he said, waving the bottle in a little circle like he was swatting a fly. "But life goes on, you know? My friends came over to cheer me up too. Dealing with all your family stuff has been really hard on me. You're not the only one suffering here." One of his friends started gathering her purse. "Maybe we should—" "No," Zach cut her off. "This is my apartment too. I can have people over. She doesn't get to just come home and ruin everything. My apartment, my lease, my utilities, my father in the ground." Carefully, like I was moving through a live wire maze, I took my phone out of my bag. I opened the text thread with Zach, took a screenshot of the message. "Can you pick up pizza? Can your family drama wait?" My thumb hovered for a second. There was exactly one person I knew who would understand what that text meant. I forwarded the screenshot to his mom, Carol. Carol adored my dad. She'd met him twice at backyard barbecues, listened to him hold court about cars and old country songs, and later she'd told me about losing her own father young. She'd once squeezed my hand at dinner and said, "If anything ever happened to your dad, I would be there for you. I know that kind of loss." Zach's eyes narrowed. "Who are you texting?" I didn't look at him. "Your mom." The room went very, very quiet. The music suddenly felt too loud and tinny against the silence of everyone staring at us. "You what?" he said. "I sent her the text you sent me," I said. The one about pizza and family drama while they were lowering my dad's casket. His smile vanished. "You can't do that. That's private. You can't just—" "You called my dad's funeral drama," I said. My voice was still weirdly calm. "You asked me to pick up pizza. I sent it to your mom." His friends suddenly became very interested in leaving. One was already at the door, mumbling something about an early morning. Another grabbed her bag without making eye contact with either of us. The girl from the couch slipped past me whispering, "I'm so sorry," on her way out. Zach's phone lit up on the counter. He lunged for it. "She's calling me. Don't answer if she calls you. Just tell her it was a joke." "It wasn't a joke," I said. "Yes, it was," he snapped. "You know I joke around. This is just my sense of humor. Babe, come on. My mom is going to freak out. Call her back and tell her you overreacted." My phone buzzed in my hand. "Carol." I answered and put it on speaker. "Hi, Carol." "Lauren," her voice came through, tight and furious. "Put my son on the phone." I held the phone out. Zach took it like it was a live grenade. "Mom, I can explain." "Shut your mouth," she said. I'd never heard her use that tone with him before. "You know what it was like when my father died. I told you that story, and you texted that girl about pizza while she was burying her dad? You asked if her family drama could wait? What is wrong with you?" "It wasn't that serious," he muttered. "Everyone's overreacting." "Not that serious?" Carol's voice sharpened. "You told her to pick up pizza while she was at the cemetery. You told her her father's funeral needed to wait because you had friends over. Are you insane?" "Mom, I'm not leaving," he said suddenly, eyes flicking to me. "He can't just kick me out. This is my home." The slip, he, was habit from old stories he'd told about roommates. It didn't matter. Carol was done. "He can," she said, "and he will. Pack your things. I'm coming to get you." She hung up. Zach stared at the phone like it had betrayed him. "She'll calm down," he said quietly to himself. "She always does. She's just being dramatic." I walked past him into the bedroom. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Helping you pack," I said. I pulled his clothes from the closet in big, unceremonious handfuls. Shirts he'd left on the floor that I'd folded. Jeans I'd washed. The jacket my dad had complimented once. I shoved them into suitcases and duffel bags. not caring if they wrinkled, not caring that my hands were shaking. "Stop," Zach said, grabbing at a pile of shirts. "You can't do this." I didn't answer. I went to the bathroom, swept his toiletries into a tote. The plant in the living room he'd insisted on buying, but never watered. I set that next to the door, too, because suddenly I didn't want to be responsible for keeping anything of his alive. Carol showed up maybe 20 minutes later. She walked in, took one look at the trashed apartment, the bottles and boxes, and the half-empty wine in his hand. "You threw a party?" she said, her voice low. He tried to hug her. "Mom, please, please." She stepped back. "Don't touch me. Where are your bags?" "I'm not leaving," he said again, but it sounded smaller this time. Carol looked at me, her eyes softened. "I am so sorry, Lauren. For your father. For this. You deserve better than this." I swallowed hard. "Thank you." Then she turned back to her son. "Get your bags, or I will pack them myself and leave them on the curb. Choose." Something in her voice finally cut through whatever denial he was clinging to. He dragged the bags I'd packed toward the door, muttering about everyone ganging up on him, about how unfair this was, how nobody cared that this was hard on him too. 3 trips down to the car. Each time he glanced back at me like he expected me to call after him, to tell him I'd changed my mind. I didn't. When the door finally closed behind them, the apartment felt huge and empty and wrecked. Wine rings on the table, an abandoned slice of pizza on a paper plate, the ghost of music still buzzing in my ears. I locked the door, leaned my back against it, looked around at the disaster of a room that, for the first time in months, might actually belong to me again. And then I slid down to the floor and cried. Not the neat, quiet tears I'd been letting leak out in bathrooms and parked cars, but the ugly, shaking sobs I'd been holding back since the phone call that said heart attack and didn't make it. I cried for my dad, for my mom, for the version of Zach I thought I knew, for the fact that the worst day of my life had somehow been turned into a backdrop for someone else's pizza party. Somewhere under all of it, a single thought settled, heavy and certain. If this is how he acts when things get hard, this is not the person I'm going to drag into whatever comes next. I thought, stupidly, that once he was out of my apartment, the drama would be over. I had no idea it was only the beginning. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my dad's casket lowering into the ground and Zach's text hovering over it like a caption. "Can your family drama wait?" At some point, I moved from the floor to the couch, then from the couch to my bed, still in my funeral dress, mascara stiff on my lashes. I woke up around 4 a.m. with my heart pounding like someone had banged on the door. It was my phone buzzing on the nightstand. For a second, I thought, hospital, mom, something else has gone wrong. I grabbed it. It was Zach. "I can't believe you kicked me out. My mom won't even talk to me. This is all your fault." Another ping. If you had just explained to her it was a misunderstanding, none of this would have happened. I stared at the screen, that dull numbness in my chest, turning into something sharper. Even now, he was rewriting the story. I didn't respond. At 7, while I was making coffee I wasn't hungry for, my phone started ringing. Zach. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. I blocked his number. By 9, the silence on my phone felt like a fragile piece. I thought maybe he was cooling off. Maybe Carol was talking sense into him. I washed dishes from the party, bagged trash, opened windows to air out the smell of stale alcohol and cheap pizza. The quiet lasted exactly until 10:32. A text popped up from an unknown number. "Really? You're going to humiliate him in front of his own mother over one text?" Then another, this one from a contact I recognized, Tori, one of Zach's closer friends. "We heard what happened. Over pizza? You're serious?" A group chat appeared that I hadn't asked to be in. 2 of his buddies. "So you're really throwing away 2 years because he had friends over? Insecure much, right?" He dodged a bullet TB. My stomach twisted, but my hands were steady as I typed. He called my father's funeral family drama and asked me to pick up pizza while I was at the cemetery. I attached the screenshot, the text, the timestamp, the tiny icon of the cemetery I'd shared earlier that day. For a long minute, nothing. Then from one of the guys, "Oh," and then they stopped. No apology, just silence. The group chat dimmed in my notifications as they left one by one. Tori sent another message. He was trying to lighten the mood. You know how he is. Everyone says things they don't mean when they're stressed. I almost heard Zach's voice in her words. You know my sense of humor. I sent her the screenshot too. She read it. The little typing bubble appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then nothing. No one else texted after that. For a few hours, my phone went back to being just a piece of glass on the counter. Grief filled the space again. I should have been at my mom's, checking on her, going through paperwork, calling insurance. Instead, I was scrubbing red wine out of the carpet from a party I hadn't attended, wondering when exactly my life had become a PR campaign I didn't sign up for. The answer came that evening. I was in my cubicle the next day, back at work sooner than I probably should have been, but sitting at home made the quiet too loud. My manager had said, "Come in if it helps. Leave if you need to. Don't push yourself." I'd nodded and told her I needed routine. Around 3, my coworker Tyler stepped into my cube and leaned against the partition. "Hey," he said gently. "Got a minute?" I minimized my spreadsheet. "Yeah?" He glanced around like he was checking for an audience. "Don't shoot the messenger, okay? I just thought you should know. Your ex is posting some stuff online." I felt that cold wash of dread again. "What stuff?" "Vague stuff," he said quickly. "Nothing with names. Just escaping a toxic relationship, finally safe, that kind of thing. Someone forwarded it to me because they knew we were friends and wanted to, I don't know, warn me. It kind of implies you were rough with him." "Rough," I repeated. Tyler winced. "Like, he says his partner physically threw him out after a small get-together. Totally different story than what you told us." For a second, I couldn't breathe. "I never touched him," I said. "His mom came and got him. She's the one who made him leave." "I believe you," Tyler said. "Seriously, if he's spinning that kind of narrative, I didn't want you to be blindsided if it got back to HR or something." The realization settled over me slowly. He wasn't just minimizing what he'd done, he was recasting himself as the victim. Later, in my car at lunch, I opened social media for the first time since the funeral. His post was there. A carefully worded paragraph about finally realizing emotional abuse isn't love, about being kicked out of your own home when you're already in pain. No names, but enough context that people who knew both of us would picture me. The comments made my stomach churn. "OMG babe, are you okay? Stay strong. We always knew something was off about her. Proud of you for getting out." I thought about posting the screenshot right then, just dropping it into the comments like a bomb. This is what he sent me while I buried my father. I even typed it out once, thumb hovering over post. Then I heard my sister's voice in my head from the night before, when I'd told her about the text, about kicking him out. "People who matter know the truth," Maya had said. "You and Mom and Carol know. You really want to spend your grief managing everyone else's opinions?" I deleted the draft and closed the app. For about a day, things stayed at that slow simmer. Whispered conversations at work when people thought I couldn't hear. A couple of neutral texts from acquaintances. "Hey, just checking in. You okay?" With subtext they didn't voice. Then Carol called. It was late, the sky outside my windows deep blue. I'd been half watching some cooking show my dad used to like, more for the background noise than anything else. "Hi," I answered. "Everything okay?" Her sigh crackled over the line. "I don't know if okay is the word," she said. "I need to tell you what's going on over here." My heart sank. What did he do? "He moved back in and expected everything to go back to normal," she said. Feet up on my coffee table, me doing his laundry, cooking his meals, like he's still 16. When I bring up what he did to you, he says it's not that deep and everyone's being extra. I pressed my fingers to my temple. That sounds like him. "I overheard him on the phone yesterday," Carol continued. "He was talking to some friend about showing up at your work, making a scene, trying to get you in trouble with HR. Something about, if she can ruin my life, I'll ruin hers first." My chest tightened. Of course. "I told him if he went near you, I'd drive him to the police station myself," she said. "I don't know if that's enough. I didn't want you blindsided." "Thank you," I said quietly. "I appreciate you telling me." After we hung up, I sat there for a long minute, phone balanced on my knee. Every instinct I had was to minimize, to tell myself he was just venting, just talking big, that he wouldn't actually drive to my job and start a fight in the lobby. Then I thought about the text at the cemetery, the party, the way he'd looked at me when I said I'd sent it to his mom. I thought about all the ways he'd already decided my boundaries were optional. I opened my work email. Subject line, potential workplace disruption. I kept the message clinical. I explained that I'd recently ended a relationship under difficult circumstances, that my ex had been minimizing a bereavement situation, and had reacted badly when I enforced a boundary. I mentioned that his mother had warned me he might show up at my workplace and cause a scene. I did not vent. I did not dramatize. I attached the screenshot of the funeral text as context, letting Zach's own words speak for themselves. My manager replied within 20 minutes, looping in HR. Thank you for letting us know, Lauren. We're so sorry you're dealing with this on top of your loss. HR will make a note and will brief reception and security. If he arrives, you won't have to handle it alone. For the first time since this whole thing started, I felt a small exhale of relief. Someone else knew, someone official. 2 days later, I was at my desk, half focused on an email thread about inventory discrepancies, when my desk phone rang. Lauren Keating, I said. Hi, Lauren. It's Jasmine at reception. Her voice had that careful tone people use when something is wrong and they're trying not to let you hear it. There's someone here to see you. Says he's your boyfriend. Security's already down here with us. My hand automatically tightened around the phone. My skin went cold. Zach? I asked, even though I already knew. He says his name is Zach, yes, she said. The room around me blurred at the edges. My heart beat so hard it hurt. I'll be right down, I said. I hung up. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at my computer screen. The cursor blinked at the end of a half-finished sentence in my email, oblivious. Then I stood up, smoothed my shirt with shaking hands, and walked toward the elevator, every step echoing with the same thought. This is where it either stops or it gets so much worse. When the doors opened into the lobby, he was standing there, dressed like he was on his way to a date, hair-styled, a paper coffee cup in his hand, smiling at me like none of it had ever happened. Security stood a few feet behind him, their stance polite but alert. The receptionist glanced at me with an apologetic expression, like she wished she could teleport me out of the building. Zach lifted the coffee cup toward me with a bright, practiced smile. Hey, babe, I brought you your favorite. Thought we could talk. His voice was soft, coaxing, like he was speaking to a child or a skittish animal. I felt the air in my lungs tighten. We can talk here, I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Whatever you need to say, you can say it in the lobby. He laughed lightly, as if I'd made a small, cute misunderstanding. Come on, Laure. Really? You want an audience? He glanced pointedly at security. Let's just go somewhere private. 5 minutes. I drove all the way. We're not doing this privately, I said. We're not together. You shouldn't be here. The smile cracked. A thin, irritated line replaced it. Don't be like that, he said. I've been trying to call you. I miss you. My mom's been freezing me out. Everyone's being weird, and you're ignoring me like I'm some stranger. His eyes flicked over my face. You're not even going to hug me? Zach, I said carefully, you threw a party the night I buried my father, and you told me to pick up pizza at the cemetery. That is not something you move past. He scoffed. You're still stuck on that? God, Lauren, it was one text. One. You're being dramatic. I felt the slow burn in my chest, anger mixing with disbelief. Security, I said, without looking away from him. Please escort him out. They stepped forward. That was the moment he snapped. His voice pitched suddenly, sharp and furious, loud enough that people in line for badges turned their heads. Oh, so that's how it is, he said. You kick me out of my home. You turn my mother against me. You refuse to talk to me, and now you're having me thrown out of your office like I'm dangerous? You're unbelievable. He stepped closer. Security intervened immediately, blocking him from getting within arm's reach. Zach jabbed a finger in my direction. You know what? Everyone's going to know what you're really like. How you controlled me and isolated me. How you abused me. I have proof. Proof. The word echoed with a chilling emptiness. What proof? I asked. I've been documenting everything, he said triumphantly. Every fight. Every time you made me feel like garbage. My therapist agrees you're textbook abusive. The lobby went dead silent. You don't have a therapist, I said quietly. I got one after you traumatized me, he snapped. And she agrees you're dangerous. I stared at him, stunned. It was like watching someone tear free from reality thread by thread. Security stepped even closer now. Ma'am, one of them said to me gently, would you like us to escort him out? Yes, I said. Zach must have realized he was losing control again, because his whole face twisted into something mean, something aimed directly at the softest part of me. He flung the coffee at me. The world blinked. It hit my shirt, hot and soaking through the fabric immediately. I gasped involuntarily as the burn registered, not scalding enough for the hospital, but painful, sharp, humiliating. That's what you deserve, he spat. I hope your dead father would be proud. Everything went still. I felt every pair of eyes in the lobby turn toward us. Even the receptionist's breath caught. Security grabbed him, not roughly, but with firm professionalism, and began walking him toward the exit. He started screaming about lawyers, about assault, about how I had attacked him, about how I'd ruined his life. They pushed him through the doors as he kept shouting, and I just stood there, drenched in cooling coffee, shaking so hard my teeth almost clicked. Jasmine hurried out from behind her desk with paper towels. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Are you okay?" I nodded because I didn't know what else to do. But the truth was, I wasn't. I was rattled to my bones. My boss called me into her office an hour later. HR was already there. They'd seen the security footage. They'd reviewed my earlier email. They'd spoken to the guards and reception. "Lauren," my boss said gently, "we need to ask you something." I braced myself. "Okay. Do you want to press charges?" For a moment, I stared at her, unable to process the question. Press charges against someone I had loved, someone I had once pictured marrying, someone I had cried about in the shower, wondering if I'd been too harsh. A part of me wanted to shake my head, say no, say I just wanted this all to be over. But another part, the one that had stood at my father's grave while Zach texted me about pizza, stepped forward. "Yes," I said, "I do." By the end of the day, the police report was filed, the footage submitted, the screenshot included. When I got home, still wearing the coffee-stained shirt because I had been too tired to care, there was an envelope taped to my apartment door, my name written in Zach's handwriting. I stood in the hall staring at it until a neighbor walked by and gave me a cautious look. I peeled it off and carried it inside. Inside were 5 handwritten pages. 5. He had filled every line. It wasn't an apology. It was a manifesto about how I had ruined his life, how I'd stolen his home, how I'd turned his own mother against him, how I'd abandoned him in his darkest hour. Not one mention of my dad, not one acknowledgement of what he'd done. Just rage dressed like heartbreak. I photographed each page, added them to the folder. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and realized something quietly devastating. This wasn't someone having a bad week. This wasn't someone overwhelmed by grief. This was someone who genuinely believed the universe had wronged him simply by holding him accountable. 3 days later, I was sitting in a courtroom getting a temporary restraining order. He cried, sobbed, told the judge I was vindictive, told him I was unstable, told him I was weaponizing my father's death. Then the judge read the funeral text. Then he watched the security footage, and the ruling came swift and firm. Walking out of the courthouse afterward, I thought that might be the end of it. But the thing about people like Zach, when they lose control of the story, they don't stop. They escalate. And that was exactly what he did next. The first fake email arrived at 2 a.m. I saw it when I woke up and checked my phone out of habit, one of those autopilot movements you make before your brain fully wakes. The subject line read, "You ruined everything." The body was worse. "Hope you're happy, Lauren. You destroyed someone who loved you. Your dad would be ashamed of you. Everyone knows what you really are." No signature, no name, just enough venom to curdle the air in my lungs. I blocked the account. Then I forwarded the message to my lawyer with a brief note. "New harassment. Likely him. Please add to the file." By the time I finished making coffee, 2 more emails had arrived from 2 different throwaway addresses. Same tone, same structure, same misspellings Zach always made. I forwarded those too. That became the new pattern. Every morning, a handful of new anonymous messages telling me I was a monster, a liar, an abuser, a disgrace. The kind of things meant to crawl under your skin and stay there. My lawyer kept telling me, "Good, keep sending them. This helps us." But each one still hurt. Then my landlord called. "Lauren, hi, this is Mateo from the leasing office." I straightened instinctively. "Hi, everything okay?" "Well." He cleared his throat in a way that told me the answer was no. "We received a call from someone claiming to be your girlfriend, asking how to report an illegal sublet and whether you'd violated your lease." Girlfriend, the gender swap echo of what Zach must have told them. "I don't have a girlfriend," I said flatly, "and I'm definitely not subletting." "That's what I figured," Mateo said kindly. "She also tried to claim she was on the lease and needed us to make her a key. Told her she wasn't listed as a tenant, and we couldn't do that." A chill crawled up my spine. "Thank you for not giving her one." "Of course, just thought you should know." After we hung up, I sat on the couch staring at nothing. He had tried to get into my workplace, into my home, into my landlord's office. Every boundary I drew, he found a new angle to test. That night, after a day of feeling like my nerves were held together with string, I went down to the parking garage to grab something from my car. The moment the overhead lights washed over the hood, I froze. Deep scratches carved into the paint. Long, deliberate gouges down both sides as if someone had dragged a key with all their weight. and across the hood, carved so deeply the metal bent. Liar. My breath stuttered in my chest. For a full minute, I couldn't move. Then I fumbled for my phone and called the police. An officer came, flashlight sweeping across the damage, jaw tightening. "Looks personal," he said. "You have anyone who might have done this?" I didn't even have to think. Yes. He had me file a report. Then he pulled up the building's camera footage. On the grainy video, a figure in a hoodie passed through at 2:07 a.m. Couldn't see the face clearly, but the height, the build. It was him, or one of his friends doing him a favor. Another report, another entry in the ever-growing file. I thought I was already at my limit, but things weren't done, escalating. A few days later, Carol called. Her voice was tired, not angry, just tired in a way that made my heart hurt. "Lauren," she said, "I need to show you something." She came over half an hour later holding a manila folder, hands trembling. "I shouldn't have gone through his phone," she said, voice cracking. "I know it's a violation, but I needed to understand if he was lying to me. If this story he's telling about you was real or just—" She shook her head. "I didn't expect this." Inside the folder were printed screenshots, group chats, dated timestamps, message after message after message. In one chat, "Don't worry, everyone believes women anyway. I'll be fine." Another, "I'm gonna ruin her rep. She'll lose her apartment, her job, everything." Another, "His dad just died, so perfect timing, TBH. Everyone will feel sorry for me. Perfect timing, for the worst moment of my life." My stomach churned violently. I closed my eyes and pressed a hand against my mouth. "I knew he was spoiled," Carol whispered. "But this is cruelty. This is manipulation. I don't know what happened to my son." She covered her face with her hands for a moment. "I enabled him. I made excuses. I told myself he was just stressed, just overwhelmed, just being dramatic. I raised him, and yet somehow I didn't teach him empathy. I wished I could say something comforting, but the truth was a brutal weight in my chest." "Carol," I said gently, "this isn't your fault." She dropped her hands. Her eyes were red. "I think it is, but thank you for saying that." The next morning, I brought the screenshots to my lawyer. He skimmed them, his eyebrows rising slowly, then setting into something sharp and satisfied. "This is perfect," he said. "Proof of malicious intent, targeted harassment, smear campaign. Combined with the coffee incident, the vandalism, the emails, this guarantees a permanent restraining order, maybe even grounds for damages." "I don't want money," I said. "I just want him to leave me alone." "Then we'll make sure he understands that consequences exist," he replied, "and that he can't rewrite the world to suit him." 2 weeks until the hearing. 2 weeks of bracing myself. 2 weeks of checking my locks twice before bed. Then came the night that finally made me afraid in a way I had never been before. It was my dad's birthday. He would have been 57. My mom made his favorite dinner, barbecue chicken he used to oversalt, mashed potatoes the way he taught her, a store-bought chocolate cake because he always said homemade frosting was a scam by people who hate convenience. We told stories. We cried. It wasn't healing, not really, but it helped. When I got home, the hallway to my apartment was quiet. Too quiet. My stomach tightened before I even reached the door. The deadbolt was crooked, the door cracked open by half an inch. I stopped breathing. I stepped back, called 911, told them I thought someone had broken in. When the officers arrived, they told me to stay behind them as they pushed the door fully open. Lights off, silence. A faint smell of perfume that didn't belong to me. They cleared the rooms one by one. "No one's here," one officer said. "You can come in slowly." Nothing was stolen, but the drawers were open. Papers scattered, closet rummaged through, files shifted, the box with my dad's personal items, opened and rifled through. Not theft, a search, like someone hunting for something they could use. The officers studied me sympathetically. "Given everything in your file, this is escalation. You got somewhere you can stay for a few days?" I nodded, numb. "My sister's." He gave me a long look. "Good. Don't be alone right now." I packed a bag with shaking hands. My sister nearly broke her car door getting out when I called her. She hugged me so hard I almost crumpled. "Dad's been gone barely 3 weeks," she whispered. "And he's doing this. What is wrong with him?" I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that I wasn't safe anymore. Not in my home, not in my car, not online, not anywhere Zach could reach. And he was still reaching. The next attack didn't come through my phone or my door. It came through my job. The email from HR arrived at 10:14 a.m., right when I'd finally started to feel like a human being again. Sleeping at my sister's, eating actual meals, breathing without my pulse tripping over itself. The subject line read, Follow-up regarding anonymous reports. My stomach clenched. I opened it. Hi, Lauren. We received an anonymous complaint this morning alleging that you've created a hostile work environment and made a colleague feel unsafe. We are required to inform you when such claims are submitted. At this time, the report lacks identifying information and specific allegations. We are conducting a routine review. HR. Routine review. Corporate politeness, for we know something's off, but we have to investigate anyway. I closed the email and pressed my forehead against my palm. A minute later, another email came through. Then another. All from HR. All identical. 3 separate anonymous complaints. All submitted within 8 minutes of each other. I walked straight to my boss's office. She looked up the second I knocked, her eyebrows lifted. I'm guessing you saw the emails? Yes, I said, standing in her doorway because I suddenly didn't trust my knees. It's him. It has to be him. She exhaled, pushed her glasses up on her nose, and clicked something on her screen. It is already checking the source. Sit for a moment. I sat. 2 agonizing minutes later, her inbox pinged. She clicked it. Her eyes narrowed. It's coming from the same IP address, she said. A residential network, not a VPN. Then her expression shifted, tired, unsurprised. Lauren, she said gently, that IP belongs to your ex's mother's house. I stared at her. He's filing fake complaints from Carol's Wi-Fi? Yes. Somehow that hurt even more than the coffee. My boss closed the message and folded her hands. We are closing the complaints as fraudulent. None of this will touch your record. Relief washed over me, but it was thin, fragile. Thank you. And Lauren, she added softly, I'm so sorry. This is not normal heartbreak. This is harassment, and we're here for you. I nodded because I couldn't speak. Later that night, Carol called. He's gone, she said without even saying hello. My pulse jumped. Gone where? I don't know, she said, voice cracking. He packed a bag this morning, screamed at me for sabotaging his life, and walked out. Said he's staying with a friend because I'm brainwashed. I don't know where he went, but I think this is the point where I have to stop protecting him. She let out a long, shaky breath. I'm so sorry, Lauren. I never imagined my son could do this. My throat tightened. I know, none of us did. But deep down, part of me wondered, was he gone because he'd finally hit bottom, or because he'd decided to escalate somewhere else? The answer came 2 days later. I was sitting at my desk, half focused on a spreadsheet I'd been staring at for so long the numbers swam, when my phone buzzed with a notification. A social media tag. I hadn't touched social media in days. I clicked it. It was a post from Zach. A long one. A dramatic one. A wildly fabricated one. I finally escaped the woman who abused me for years. She manipulated me using her father's death. She isolated me from everyone I loved. I'm finally safe, but healing will take time. Please respect my privacy during this difficult journey. The comments section was a parade of hearts and sympathy. We're here for you, babe. So proud of you for speaking out. She always seemed cold to me, TBH. Stay strong. My hands were shaking, and something inside me, something I'd held together with duct tape and prayer since the day of the funeral, finally snapped. I opened the photo of the funeral text, the one he sent while my father's casket was being lowered into the ground. I uploaded it, and I captioned it. This is what he sent me while I buried my father. This is the manipulation he's talking about. Let's be clear. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like air fill my lungs. Then I put my phone down and went back to work. The reaction took minutes. Shock, outrage, disbelief. Friends of his commenting things like, I'm so sorry, Lauren. We had no idea. I can't believe he said that during the funeral. Zach didn't post again. But around 7 p.m., my phone rang from an unknown number. I didn't answer. Then it rang again. Then again. When I finally picked up, a woman's voice burst through in a panic. Lauren, this is Priya. He's staying with me. Her words tumbled over each other. You need to take that post down. No, I said. You don't understand, she insisted. He's having a breakdown. He's sobbing. He threw up. He's not okay. Neither was I said quietly. When he threw coffee on me, when he keyed my car, when he broke into my apartment, when he filed fake HR complaints. There are police reports. There is security footage. There is evidence. Silence. A long one. Then she whispered, he told us none of that happened. Now you know, I said. Tell him to leave me alone, and I'll consider taking the post down. She hung up. At midnight, a text came from another unknown number. You win. Okay? You win. Just delete it. Everyone hates me now. I didn't respond. But 2 days later, when the message had done its job, when his lies had stopped spreading, I deleted the post. Not because he asked, Because I was done giving him real estate in my life. The harassment stopped after that. No more emails, no more vandalism, no more anonymous complaints. The day of the permanent restraining order hearing, Zach didn't show up. The judge reviewed the file, scanned the printed screenshots, watched the coffee footage again, and granted a 5-year no-contact order. Just like that. And then he disappeared. Carol texted me a week later. He moved to Arizona. He's staying with his father. I think distance is best for everyone. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I turned off my phone. For the first time in months, the world was quiet. Really quiet. And in that quiet, the grief I had been holding at bay finally came rushing back. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that makes you realize how loud survival mode had been, how much space fear had taken up, how much room crisis had carved out inside you. When the chaos stopped, the silence wasn't comforting. It was unfamiliar, like stepping into a room you used to live in but no longer recognize. I moved back into my apartment after the locksmith changed every lock, every hinge, every screw. My landlord installed a deadbolt reinforcement plate free of charge. I bought a Ring doorbell with motion alerts. I slept with the hallway light on the first night, then the second, then most nights after that. With Zach gone, there was nothing left to drown out the one truth I had been avoiding. My father was still gone. And now, finally, there was no screaming, no texts, no HR investigations, no police reports to hide behind. Just grief, raw and unfiltered, and the guilt that I had somehow let someone else's chaos hijack the days I should have spent mourning him. The first morning I woke up to real quiet. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, tears slipping down my temples into my hair. Not sobbing, just tears. The kind of crying that happens when your body finally realizes it doesn't have to stay in battle mode anymore. Therapy helped. I started going twice a week. The therapist was a soft-spoken woman named Dr. Emery. She had kind eyes and a way of listening that made you feel held, not examined. The texts, the vandalism, the break-in, she said one session as she reviewed my timeline. These aren't normal reactions to heartbreak. This is a pattern consistent with escalating narcissistic injury. I stared at her. So, what does that mean? Clinically? It means he never learned how to regulate shame, she said gently. And when someone like Zach feels shame, rejection, consequences, they attack. They rewrite reality. They lash out. Is he dangerous? I asked, voice smaller than I meant it to be. She thought for a moment. Not physically given the pattern, but emotionally, absolutely. He weaponized your lowest moment. He made your grief about him. He violated your boundaries repeatedly. That is abuse. I swallowed hard. Hearing it labeled felt strange, validating and horrifying at the same time. I spent a lot of afternoons at my mom's. She'd make tea she never finished drinking, and I'd sit at the kitchen table listening to her tell stories about my dad, stories she had told before, stories she repeated because remembering hurt less than forgetting. One Sunday she said, "Your father would have handled that boy himself if he were here." I smiled softly. Dad would have gone to jail. She laughed through a tear. Worth it. My sister Maya called every morning, even if just to say, "Drink water." It was annoying and comforting all at once. At work, Tyler brought me lunch twice a week, sandwiches or leftovers his girlfriend made, and he'd sit with me in the break room without demanding conversation. Sometimes we talked about normal things, like weekend plans or TV shows. Sometimes we sat in total silence, and it was the easiest silence I'd felt in months. People showed up in places I didn't expect. One afternoon, an envelope slid under my door. Inside was a sympathy card. No return name, just a note. "I'm sorry I believed him." A friend who should have known better. A week later, I sold some of my dad's tools. He'd collected so many, half for projects he never finished, half for projects he planned to teach me someday. His toolbox had become a shrine I didn't know how to open. My therapist suggested keeping one thing and letting the rest go. So I kept his favorite wrench. Heavy, iron. The one he'd used on every car repair. The one he'd tossed to me when I was 11 and said, "Real tools, real learning." I cleaned it carefully, polished it until it caught the light, and set it on my desk. It wasn't sentimental in the traditional sense, it was just him. A week after that, an unknown number texted me. "I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong. I hope you can forgive me someday." I sat with that text for a while. Not because it meant anything, not because I believed a single word, but because it was proof the harassment had truly stopped. Proof of distance. Proof that the restraining order, the exposure, the consequences had finally forced him to step back. Then I blocked the number. Because sorry doesn't uncarve liar from my car. Sorry doesn't unthrow coffee. Sorry doesn't unbreak a deadbolt. Sorry doesn't unspin lies about abuse. Sorry doesn't give me back the month I lost to fear instead of grieving. Some things you don't come back from. A few weeks later, I signed a lease for a new apartment, somewhere Zach had never been. Somewhere with fresh walls and no memories soaked into the carpet. I packed slowly, choosing what to bring, what to leave, what no longer needed to belong to any version of my past. Carol texted me occasionally. Once on a weekday morning. Thinking of you today. Your dad sounded like a wonderful man. I'm so sorry for everything. Carol. Another time she sent flowers on what would have been my dad's 57th birthday. The card read, I raised a son who isn't the man I believed he was, but I see strength in you that I wish he'd had. You deserve better. See, I cried for 10 minutes straight opening that card. Some of Zach's friends reached out too, after seeing the screenshot and hearing about the police reports. Not excuses, apologies. We're sorry. We should have believed you. We didn't know. I appreciated it, but I didn't reply. Trust wasn't free anymore. And then came the final realization. It didn't hit me all at once. It came slowly, quietly, like dawn bleeding into a window. For the first time in months, I was no longer afraid. I'd survived the ugliest version of someone I once loved. I'd survived lies, vandalism, humiliation, intrusion, and cruelty. I had rebuilt routines, boundaries, relationships, and safety. And now I was standing at the threshold of a new apartment, keys in hand, the hallway smelling faintly of paint and possibility. I stepped inside. New floors, blank walls, a view that caught more sky than street. I set my dad's wrench on the kitchen counter, a foundation piece in a brand new place. People always say healing isn't linear. Maybe they're right. But rebuilding? Rebuilding is deliberate, slow, steady. One boundary, one choice, one safe place at a time. My dad used to say, people show you who they are when things get hard. He was right. Zach showed me. I believed him. And now? Now I'm moving forward. That's the closest thing to a happy ending I'm going to get. And honestly, it's enough.